In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of In Full Zoom. I'm Nestor Licanto, and this week we're pleased to welcome our guest, Captain Noel Enriquez, who has just been appointed the Civilian Aide for Guam to the Secretary of the Army. Half a day, Noel.
Half a day, and good afternoon.
First of all, background before we get started on the appointment.
As far as myself, I think most people have worked with me, and I've been here on Guam for over 30 years, and Guam is home. Primarily was on active duty with the Navy, and then went to the private sector for the past 20 plus years. Worked for the petroleum industry, and then currently with engineering firms, trying to build and make sure we fix the infrastructure here on Guam. So a lot of different things. I've been involved with a lot of volunteer nonprofit organizations, everything from not only the military side, but also the education side. I've had the opportunity to counsel a lot of students that have been applying to the Naval Academy. And actually I've been doing it for 25 years, and we've had more than probably 30 to 40 students graduating from the Naval Academy from Guam and even from the region. And I'm proud to say that, we have a lot of qualified and very smart kids that can compete with anybody else in the country. And, I know what, we're going to talk in a few minutes about my recent nomination, but it actually provides the background to what I'm going to be doing in the future for this position, because a lot of it is not only understanding challenges here on Guam, but also how to work with the community, especially the people. And I've had the opportunity to do that many times in my life here on Guam, because give you an example. I think you heard a couple years ago, or even more than that, after Pangsongwa, the typhoon devastated the Sinahanya Church, St. Thaddeus Church, and the roof blew away, and actually managed to rebuild that church. And I was out there in the community trying to drum up support, and we were able to get enough funds to rebuild the church, and now we have a church that's now going to be at least another 80 years old. So my background basically position myself to be able to support what I'm going to be doing in the future. Yeah,
and so as we said at the top, you've been nominated by another service. So you spend most of your time with the Navy, but the Secretary of the Army saw fit to appoint you as the Guam Civilian Aide. What does that entail?
Well, the primary role for the civilian aide of the Secretary of the Army is to bridge the gap between the Army and the civilian community. I don't think there's a lot of gap here. As you know, the community works a lot with the military. Unfortunately, we don't have a Army, real Army, meaning active duty Army, but we do have the National Guard and Army Reserves here. And so that's where I kind of helped the Secretary become the liaison for the Army National Guard and the Army Reserve. In fact, I just recently had a meeting with our Territorial Adjutant General, General Agagi, to discuss what I can do to support the National Guard. And then also the ROTC program at the University of Guam met with their leader, Lieutenant Colonel Anderson, to kind of discuss the things that I can do to support, especially the students. One of the roles that I play is actually to support scholarship programs that I didn't even know about before I started this position. And there are other opportunities where the students can actually obtain scholarships to not only on Guam, but throughout the country, to be able to get a full 4-year program, graduate as a Army officer, but at the same time have a degree, maybe come back to Guam. But at the same time, if they decide not to have a long-term career with the Army, they can still come back and have a great education. The other things I do right now is, or the job that I fill right now is to assist in recruiting And as you know, recruiting on Guam is very high compared to the rest of the country. So I don't think I have to do a lot with that. But the other areas I need to work on is actually supporting the Army civilians, soldiers, and their families. As you know, in the past, we had to work with them concerning, they go to the various parts of the world, protecting our country, and they're coming back and trying to figure out how to get back into a normal way of life. And so that's some of the things I have to be able to do. And then the other areas is the transition from being in the military, going back to a civilian position, a civilian life. How do I help them? And that right now, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that. So really, it's representing the Secretary of the Army for Guam, and I'm able to be able to pass on the information, provide advice to the Secretary on the public sentiments, and really to say, hey, Secretary, Guam may need this. And so these are the things that that I didn't realize was as important as it was in the past. Being in the Navy, I've supported the Admiral in the past here, but now taking on a different role and being really a senior person for the Army. The position of the civilian aide to the Secretary of the Army is actually almost it's equivalent to a 3-star, a general. So to me, that's a pretty humble feeling being at that level, although my role is a volunteer position, although I did put up an oath saying that, protect the country and the island. And basically, like it was, if I was going on active duty, I did the same oath. So that's pretty much a quick overview of the position. But as I mentioned, I'm trying to learn more about the Army. But after 9/11, I was able to work with them, especially trying to protect Guam. And what I tell people is, if I tell you what happened, what I was doing after 9/11, then I have to do something, and you might not be on Earth anymore. So,
yeah.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E.
Yeah, let's break it down a little bit. Obviously, the Army has a huge presence here on Guam through the Army National Guard. And one of the things that has been happening a lot lately is the deployments. So there are challenges with, as you mentioned, with the family. Talk a little bit more about how what your role would be in assisting families for the soldiers who are deployed.
Well, the big thing is really the support services. Anything from health, mental, my background in the Navy, I actually supported a lot of the what they call morale, welfare, and recreation activities on Guam while I was on active duty. So I know the resources that are available for for the soldiers' families here. And so I think that's one of the reasons I was appointed, because of my experience with what's available here for military families. I did that for about a couple of years back in early 2000, and I actually helped manage the housing, the commissaries, the exchanges. So, knowing what is available for the families, and even the medical, medical care. As you know, we have a brand new Naval Hospital, but during my time, it was that old 3-wing hospital that, walking the halls of that hospital, you could actually do a marathon in that building, as far as being able to, walk in that building. So the main thing is being able to support the families in anything that they need help on, and understanding what type of support is available on Guam.
Yeah, and when you say supporting the families, that means including the spouse of the active duty or the soldier that's been deployed.
Yes. And I look at across the board, even the Army civilians that they have here, if they're working as a civilian with the National Guard, I play that role of supporting them too. So it's everyone actually within the Army organization here on Guam.
Yeah, and another thing that the Guard has been heavily involved in the past almost 2 years is this pandemic. Talk a little bit about the stresses that's taken on the toll that's taken on the soldiers.
And, again, we can talk hours about that, but the main thing is trying to figure out, what type of support they would need. Everything from the mental side to being able to relax and get away from that type of activity for a couple hours, couple days, and then go back and doing the same thing. Again, trying to understand what those challenges are is one of my goals of being able to help out the Army here. Again, knowing what the Navy has gone through, especially all the sailors, I think they have the similar type of challenges. The only difference is the sailors go out to sea. The Army stays here on the island. So trying to figure out what those challenges are. And again, as I mentioned before we started this broadcast, is that, give me about a year and we can talk hours about all the things that I've been able to help or try to help with the soldiers and their families.
Yeah. Has the Army liaison office position been existed before here in Guam?
It has. I have several predecessors. One of them recently is Carl Peterson, and I believe he did it for about 10 years. The thing right now, in the past, folks that were serving as a CASA could serve as long as they could, but because of the challenges and trying to get, I guess, a fresh face and fresh ideas, they're now limiting the length of the being able to be a CASA for up to 10 years. My current term is 2 years. So if I do well and be able to support the island and the Army community here, then I get extended for another 2 years, up to 10 years. One thing to note, though, is that the Army CASA is actually the only position that's this type of position within all the different services. They don't have anything else for the Navy or the Air Force or even the Coast Guard.
Yeah, and so do you have a permanent office set up, or how are you going to operate, logistically?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, it's a volunteer position. So a lot of it is out of my own pocket. I'm trying to, in fact, I'm at home right now talking to you and I do have a makeshift office at home, not only part of my regular employment, but also serving as a CASA office. So again, it's a volunteer position. The Army will pay for certain events, especially if I have to travel, where they gather a meeting every year back in Washington, D.C. But normal day-to-day activities as far as it relates to this position, again, it's a volunteer position, and I have to really pay out of my own pocket. But you know what? I think, as I mentioned, I do that a lot, and same thing with my wife, Anita. She does a lot of volunteer work. We spend hours, and although we don't count those hours, if we transfer that to hour per salary per hour, we'd probably be millionaires today. But unfortunately, doesn't work that way, and we're happy to volunteer for the things that we've been doing the past. I quit counting. Past 20 to 30 years here on Guam.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises Inc. and IT&E.
Yeah, we certainly know how much you and Dr. Anita pay it forward here on Guam. You mentioned there might be some instances where you have to travel. Will you be meeting directly with the Secretary of the Army, or is there levels at different meetings that you will have with other levels?
Well, I was hoping outside of COVID, I would have met her during my invocation. And normally that's what happens, is they allow us to travel back to Washington, D.C. to do the invocation. But yes, my other role really is to collaborate with a lot of the local, regional, and territorial officials especially as it relates to Army concerns. And, there's a lot of discussion right now on Guam, and I know we talk about strategic location, but at the end of the day, we've been a strategic location forever. But more importantly is what's going on in this region. But yes, I do have the opportunity to meet with other officials. In fact, I'm planning to schedule meetings with the Admiral and even the General up in Anderson. So just to let them know that I'm here, that I've just recently been appointed and trying to fill this role for the Secretary and be able to support Guam and this nation and be able to figure out how to work with the soldiers here on Guam.
Yeah, if you were to meet with the Secretary and maybe her top aides, what would you tell her about Guam and the Army's situation here?
Well, the first thing I'd say is, Guam is probably, especially its people, are the most patriotic folks in the United States. I don't have to tell the folks here in the audience as that, we have so many people that joined the military. And I understand, the challenges we have with employment, but at the end of the day, most not only join, but they extend their term. Some of them has been with the military, not only the normal 2 to 3 years, they stay on 10, 20 years and retire. So I think that's the most important thing, to reinforce the fact that, Guam and its people are very patriotic. We're very supportive of what the military is doing here. I know there's some challenges with other folks, but at the end of the day, I think, if it wasn't for the military, we wouldn't be in the position we are today, especially with the COVID environment. And where do we get the people to come in and especially the hotels? So again, I look at it two different ways as far as how to how the military's role here is on Guam, but talking to the Secretary, those two things are probably the most important thing. Is one is the patriotic folks that we have here, and also the support that we provide to the military.
Yeah, I know it's not going to be your role coming up as the civilian aide, but there's been a lot of talk about Guam's growing strategic importance. There was just a report, global, I forget exactly the name of it, but apparently the Department of Defense is going to be throwing a lot more assets toward Guam and even the CNMI in Australia. The Indo-Pacific will be the theater of the future, I guess. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, as you mentioned, I normally would not get involved with that, but just so you know, the words that you're looking for is the global posture review.
Right.
Basically to look at what's going on in this region and with the threats. In my other hat, I do have other hats, and unfortunately, I can't go into the detail, but I know the United States' primary role is to protect Guam. I know there's some conversation about different things out there in the media. But in my heart and in my mind, as far as what's going on with the global posture review, the reason why they're looking at Guam, again, not because it's strategically located, but we are American citizens, and the military's role is to protect American citizens, and that's what I see and what I feel, and I know based on what I see in my own other hats, that is what they're trying to do.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E. GU Self-Storage, conveniently located near the Harmon McDonald's. We offer affordable rates, online payments, and auto bill pay for your convenience. Plus gate access daily from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Call us today at 648-7867 for more information. In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.
Yeah, I understand that a lot of this is classified, but would you say that a lot of attention has also been focused on the protection of Guam from any Chinese threat should it develop? Knock on wood, it doesn't.
Well, I can tell you right now, even after 9/11, Guam, the United States has looked at Guam and being able to protect it. And I personally wasn't involved in that. Again, I can't provide the details, but I did get involved with a lot of things that were being done to protect Guam. So I can, like I said, I can in fact say that the United States is looking at Guam not only as a jumping point, but also to make sure that we're protected from any threats throughout this region.
And do you see an increase in personnel in addition to all the Marines that will be relocating here? Will we see an even bigger military personnel presence on Guam in the years ahead?
Well, I wish I can say that or not, but unfortunately, I don't. Again, I don't get that information. My position again is going back to being able to help what's going on with the Army, between the recruiting and the families. Really, that's and again, if you're talking to me in my other hat, I probably can give you a better advice. But unfortunately, with what we're talking about right now, my role is really to support the Army.
Sure, and I appreciate that. We got a couple of minutes left, Captain. Maybe you could just give us your final message to folks out there, the Army in particular, and what you'll be doing and planning for them in the upcoming years.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, this is a rare opportunity to help the island, and not only, with the Army side of the house, but being able to pass the word back to a leader in the United States, one of the senior leaders, in being able to figure out how to best support Guam. You got an individual that you can tell to say, hey, Secretary, we need help here. And so I think with that conduit available, we don't have to go through somebody from Indo-PACOM or some other high military leader. We go directly to the Army Secretary to be able to give her give her advice on what to look for with the Army here on Guam. So I think, in a way, that's an opportunity for the island to be able to figure out and help us understand what needs to be done to make sure we're continuing to be protected, whether we have threats here or even during natural disasters, things like that. At the end of the day, the military is not here. It primarily is for protection of the country and the island, but we're also here for all types of like disasters or supporting any type of disasters related to natural disasters. So I think that's the most important thing to highlight to the community, is that, you got a person who can have a voice to a leader back in Washington, D.C., and you can't get closer to the secretary than if you were talking directly to the president.
Yeah, that's quite an asset for us to have. Thank you. Captain Noel Enriquez is the recently appointed Guam Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, I'm Nestor Licanto. Thanks again for watching this edition of In Full Zoom. We'll see you again next week.
In Full Zoom is presented by Calvo Enterprises, Inc. and IT&E.